Gameplay story integration is one of my favorite things that video games do. It's one thing if a book or a movie tells you that a hero's facing insurmountable odds, but it's another thing to be that hero facing the insurmountable odds. Fire Emblem has been telling its story through gameplay since the very start, and arguably, it's been doing it the best or among the best of all of the long-running JRPG series. And today, I wanted to look through the franchise's history and just bring up a few cases that I think are really cool to think about. Now, this is not going to be every single time the franchise has done gameplay story integration. That would take hours upon hours. This is just going through and going, hey, this is cool. Maybe you've heard of these before, maybe you haven't, maybe you'll learn something new. Before we begin, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, or else I will break into your house and put aluminum foil in your microwave.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
Story 1. Arran has super cancer. Starting off on a pleasant note, Arran is a paladin from the very first Fire Emblem game. When he's recruited, he's a solid good out of 10. He's not going to be one of the best units in your army, but he has decent enough bases and decent enough growths that he can contribute in a meaningful, if not as meaningful as others, way. Now, that's just in FE1. In FE3, when he comes back for Book 2, he is a lot worse for wear. His base stats are roughly the same, minus a huge loss in luck, but the difference comes in with his growth rates. All of them have plummeted to absolute garbage, just 10% across the board. And he joins you in your starting party as well, so you immediately have time to realize he's not going to grow at all. The reason for this is told by a villager in the game's first map, saying that Arran has gotten a deadly illness, and he's basically fighting on the battlefield while it's a fight for him just to stay alive while his own body is killing him. If Arran's illness was just happening in the background, it probably wouldn't be that interesting, but the fact that it impacts his ability to perform on the battlefield makes it stand out a lot more, and on top of that, it also works into the game's permadeath mechanic, as Arran is the only character, really in the entire series, to have a happy death quote. If he lives to the end of the game, his epilogue is just that he dies anyway of illness. But if you get him killed, he's actually happy that he got to die on the battlefield like a proud knight, saying that it was his last wish, which is really, really neat in my opinion. It's really depressing, but it did give us a really cool cipher card. Story 2. Seliph's self-esteem issues. Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War takes place over 2 generations, with the first generation being led by Sigurd, and the second being led by his son some 20 years later named Seliph. And Seliph has a major self-esteem problem. He feels as though he can't live up to the heroics of his father, and this isn't just something that the game tells you. In Gen 1, Sigurd is arguably the greatest unit in Fire Emblem history. He starts mounted in the game where mounts are at their most powerful, he has incredibly solid stats from the start, and he's given an incredibly powerful silver sword in the prologue. And in FE4, weapons don't break and then they're out of your inventory. If they break, you just go repair them. So Sigurd has a silver sword for the whole game with incredible stats, and he's basically never dying at any point. He is genuinely the greatest unit Fire Emblem has ever seen. So when Seliph says that he doesn't feel like he can live up to him, you feel that. Because when you get Seliph, he is not as capable of killing things on his own like his father is. He doesn't have a mount, and the second generation of genealogy isn't suddenly less lovely for mounts. He's feeling the loss of not having one. And the best part about this is the game and the story can explore how Seliph becomes more his own warrior. As he levels up, as he promotes and he gets more stats and a mount, he becomes every bit as powerful as Sigurd was. In fact, you could argue that he becomes even stronger. You feel Seliph's character journey. You feel him as this frail little swordsman walking across these big maps to a proud commander riding in the front lines to deliver the world justice. It's not just told by him learning things from Lewin and becoming a wiser king. You feel his journey. Fire Emblem 4 constantly throws away good balance for story reasons. The holy weapons and characters like Shannon are not balanced in the slightest, but that's because they're telling you the story of Holy Blood. It really is great for that, and I absolutely love it every time it does it. Even if, yes, the unit balance is very fucky because of it, but sacrifices have to be made. Story 3. Renault's weird stat distribution. How someone feels about Renault, I feel, is a litmus test for how crazy into Fire Emblem you are. For I want to say a solid 80% of fans, Renault is a unit they might not even remember exists, because he's a bishop that shows up on the semi-final map, and his stats aren't that great. But for people that are obsessed with Fire Emblem, they know that Renault is arguably the most important character to the lore of Fire Emblem 7. So what's weird about his stats? Well, he's a late-game bishop, so you would imagine, okay, he's got a lot of magic power. No, his magic is garbage, a pathetic base 12, but his best stats are his skill, speed, and bulk. Now, speed and skill can be typical for bishops, but the emphasis with a really high base HP and bulk is strange. This is because being a Father of the Cloth was not Renault's first plan in life. He was originally just a traveling mercenary, henceforth why his physical stats are really good. But after a friend of his died tragically, he made a deal with Nurgle in order to try to bring him back to life. And as you'd imagine with anyone who makes a deal with the devil, things don't go too well. So that's why, despite having the speed, skill, and bulk of a mercenary, he ends up as a bishop. He's trying to atone for the mistakes of his past through faith in God. He's actually probably FE7's most interesting character, and his supports are definitely worth looking up if you're a Fire Emblem 7 fan and never have before. But it's really neat how this seemingly random, unimportant character, whose only usage in a playthrough is taking a Fortify staff from to give to Athos, is actually really clever. I like Renault a lot. Story 4. A Patreon segment that I am not trying to segue into organically whatsoever. Give me $5! That's right, I have a Patreon, where for as little as $3 a month, you can get access to benefits and help support the channel. My patrons include the likes of Adebayo Thompson, Andrew Crockett, Bean Juice, Benz Again, Dr. McBackstab, Great Riek, Hell on Heelys, Ichigo D, Camus, Jaeger Guts, Kenpachi Shiro, Uzumaki, Kirei, Matos, Kratos, Char Ansel, Frederick Sirius, Bolsar, Aquaman, The White Void, Despacito 2, Larmachi, Lysevening Bolt, Marth War Criminal, Morga Lorgan, Plaid Arrow, played is pronounced like the pattern, Ranger Man Sam, Shen Lu, the world's most unironic 8.5 tail stand, Very the Artist, Walmart Reader, Your Girl Olwen, Brentendo 11, Drew Hack, Fire Emblem Lord, Ginger, Goo Gaga, Cornelia Milkers 92, Maple Knight, and Upscale Furry Trash. Thank you for continuing. Story 4. Knoll's Base 0 Luck. This is another stat one that I think is kind of fun, in a fairly fucked up kind of way. Knoll is a dark mage from Grotto. His story is that he and his friend, Prince Leon, wanted to prove to the world that dark magic doesn't deserve the name dark, that it can have genuinely helpful uses to society, and they shouldn't be looked down on just because they're shamans. Through hours and hours, days, weeks, years of research, Leon and Knoll eventually became strong enough in the arcane arts to see into the future. And this sounds great! He can see bad things before they happen and properly plan around them. However, things took a very bad turn when Knoll and Leon learned that an earthquake was going to devastate their country, wiping out what could very well be half of it in a horrifying act of Mother Nature. This does not combine well with the fact that their current emperor, Leon's father Vergard, ends up dying of death disease. So with this, Leon absolutely panics and feels like he has no idea what to do, and kinda sort of resurrects the Demon King, a monster who's going to end all of humanity. So yeah, Knoll, in trying to prove that his dark magic isn't dark, accidentally brought back the King of Darkness. And the game represents this with his base luck being 0, which might somehow be underselling it, even though his luck can't possibly be worse. This is even funnier because Arthur in Fire Emblem Fates is entirely built around the fact that he has terrible luck. It is what dominates almost all of his supports, and even he has a base luck of 1. Knoll is literally unluckier than the guy whose entire thing is that he's unlucky, and I think that's really funny. Story 5. Fire Emblem Fates' personal skills. Of everything that Fates did, I am happy that personal skills was one of the ones that ended up becoming a series mainstay. Having skills be given according to the character and their backstory and supports, rather than just by their class, is a great way to tell every little character's quirks, and Fates has a lot of good ones. Not all of them are entirely ones that make sense. Like, I don't know how Sakura being a quiet girl makes it so that when Hinata gets stabbed right next to her, he takes less damage, but almost all of them have something to do with the original character. And even if the ones that don't, Fates' cast is like 50 people. I'm willing to cut them a break. Going over every single personal skill in Fates, 3 Houses, and Engage would take forever, so I'm just gonna go over some of the ones I really like, and you can look the rest of them up yourself or think about them if you've already have the games on hand. I really, really love Arthur's skill. He's definitely not on my mind because I just talked about him with Knoll, but his personal skill lowers the critical evade of all the enemies around him. Because his bad luck is such a force of nature, it doesn't just impact him, everyone around him is being drawn into his tomfoolery. I really like how in 3 Houses, Ash starts with the Lock Touch skill, even though he's not a thief. This harkens back to his backstory, where he was just a common street urchin before being adopted by Lord Lonato. It gives you clues to who he really is well before you actually see any of his supports. In Fire Emblem Engage, Anna materializing $500 whenever she kills someone makes absolutely no goddamn sense, but that is such an Anna thing to do, I can't help but not give a shit that it doesn't make any sense. All of these personal skills are great, and they're one of my favorite things that Fire Emblem does. I genuinely look forward to reading personal skills of new units I get in all of the Fire Emblems from Fates on. I just really love this concept. Story 6. A Need for Mycen. In the original Fire Emblem Gaiden, the story starts with Lucas trying to find the great General Mycen and recruit him to his army. Now, the player has no knowledge on who Mycen is or why Lucas wants him, but in Echoes, they added a prologue at the very start of the game that takes place many years before Gaiden proper, and in it, Mycen comes in and saves all the Ram Village children in a fight where it's pretty much impossible for him to ever even come close to dying. By adding this new gameplay segment and letting you control Mycen as your only unit that can do damage, it makes it so that when Lucas comes to ask for his power, you really understand why he wants it. You just played as him. You just used him and understand, wow, that Gold Knight really goes hard. It's a small thing, not anything really worth mentioning in great detail, but I like it. It's an addition to Echoes that I really think goes under the radar. And I think that's it for this video. These aren't the only examples of gameplay story integration in the series, far from it, and there are tons of examples out there that if you have any you want to bring up, mention it in the comments. I've made videos on things like the undefeatable enemies a la the Black Knight or Hardin in FE3, and on characters like Shanann. This is a topic I love talking about, and I kind of wanted to rapid fire off a bunch of them that, just bringing attention to it because I love Fire Emblem and I love making silly little videos on things I think are cool. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.